Rock and roll doggy.
Sort of a musical journey, really.
I was going to worry about
No, it's a musical journey.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Rock and Roll Doggies. Our podcast here is two lifelong friends breaking down music that's been important in our lives. I am Jason, and along with me is the Smurf, my friend since we were teenagers. It's Don Pardue. Hey, man, how are you?
I'm all right. It's been a weekend at the beach, inhaling salt air, so it always does us so good.
We are walking through album by album in the catalog of U2, and we are up to All That You Can't Leave Behind. As U2 is reapplying for the biggest band in the world, and coming off the experimentation of U2 or of Zooropa and pop, U2 returns to the mainstream with their 10th studio album, their 10th studio release, All That You Can't Leave Behind. Don, what is your initial thoughts on this album?
This may on the surface sound a bit blasphemous, but in a way, I think it's their most accessible album in their entire catalog. The band set out to record an album where every song could potentially be a single. And I think they almost accomplished that feat. They actually started recording this on the heels of the Pop Mart tour. So like U2 often does, they tend to springboard off what they've done and often head in a different direction. They did that with the Joshua Tree as they evolved into the 90s. And I think here they're pushing back against pop and that 90s sound into something that's a lot more accessible and musically driven.
Yeah, totally agree. It's also the return to the basic setup of instruments. They wanted to return to a guitar, bass, drums, keyboards, and less about studio, less about stuff in the studio, making it sound more layered and more atmospheric, and really get back to a basic sound. Now, they did return the producing team of Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois, which we know from Joshua Tree and Unforgettable Fire, and also Achtung Baby. But it does sound different. I mean, it sounds like nothing that we've heard before. I think it is a pop record. I think it's a return to form, but not the form of war, because this is not angry. And we always, thought about, it's going to be back to basics and going to be a hard rocking record. But these guys are now grown up. It's what they sound like now. So it's back to basics in terms of simplicity, but that doesn't mean we're going to hear, like a song in Sunday Bloody Sunday. It's a mature sound. It's a pop sound, and I think it works great.
Would you agree or disagree that this album has held up perhaps better over the course of time than almost any other U2 album in their catalog?
That might be a true statement. It's definitely one of the albums that their career revolves around. It's a milestone, if you will, and it also bridges a couple different generations. Those of us who grew up with U2, and then millennials maybe that were coming of age listening to U2 as they heard this. It was new to them. They didn't really know U2, but this album is made for the radio, several hit singles, and so they were ubiquitous again. So maybe it does have better staying power for a lot of different reasons. I think that's a true statement.
Yeah, and I don't believe it's their best work. But Rolling Stone listed this as the 139th best album of all time, and that was in 2002. That list has changed, but that's a pretty lofty accolade for an album that is more commercially successful, I think, than being critically successful.
Yeah, for sure. Rolling Stone usually does rate U2 stuff pretty high, but that is impressive still. I got a quote from Rolling Stone too. They said that it's the most uninterrupted collection of song melodies that U2 had ever mounted. But that's pretty high praise too. They're talking about this being, you know, I've heard it called a murderer's row or an all-star lineup of songs from the beginning all the way through whatever in a little while or somewhere to the, 2/3 through the album. It's just good song after hit song. And so Rolling Stone thinks a lot of it. It also doesn't hurt as far as staying power and appeal that there's such a huge tie-in thematically with 9/11
Yes,
and with
yes.
the remembrances, the emotion, Walk On and Beautiful Day.
Peace on Earth.
And we know about the Super Bowl, and right, Peace on Earth, that moment in the Super Bowl, and that was after the album came out. It's funny because the other album that is associated with 9/11 is The Rising, but that was done after as a response by Springsteen. And this was done before and then kind of leveraged into the whole thing. And I think it fits retroactively to it, but that also contributes to its appeal and staying power. I got a couple more quotes I thought were really good. Adam Clayton said it's about the journey. The album is about the journey we'd been through as a band, as men in relationships, as sons of mothers and fathers. It was about the baggage that you have to live with, the sense of loss, like the fact that Bono's father was terminally ill during the whole period. And end quote there. But I mean, that's also alluding to the title. I like that. It was about the baggage that you have to live with, all that you can't leave behind, right? This is the perfect snapshot of where they all were at this time in their life.
Yeah. It's, I think it's best to view this album as the sum of its parts. So it is a very complete album, but I don't think there are any great tracks on this album. I think you have some really good tracks. There's no bad on this album. BAD is in the song. There's no Where the Streets Have No Name or One. But there aren't any bad tracks on this album. And you know what? We can't say the same thing about pop, or at least I can't.
So you're saying it's pretty consistent?
I'm saying it's very consistent. One thing that I don't know if a lot of people know, but there's an airport sign on the album cover that reads J33-3, which is a hidden reference to Jeremiah 33:3, which says, "Call unto me, and I will answer thee great and mighty things which thou knowest not." I just quoted the King James Version. I can't believe that. Bono has called this God's phone number. Nice little piece of artistic liberty there.
I didn't know that until you told me that recently, and it's actually one album cover was released, and then later they changed it. Is that right?
Yeah, the first album, the first sign was F21-36, and it was changed to J33:3. And you can actually find, I think you can find both album covers out there.
So All That You Can't Leave Behind, it was released in the end of October 2000. And, here it is, kind of a reinvention or getting back to basics. And it appeals to a lot of different folks. I remember my niece, Alex, who would have been, I guess, teenager at the time. And I remember, hanging around my brother's house, and she was there. And this song was playing, Elevation, and she was singing this song word for word, and I was singing the song, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. So it is, it does appeal to different generations. I'm not sure if she had any clue who U2 was before this album even came out. So that made me happy.
And
all right,
they were looking to, as Bono said, they were looking to recapture the title of best band in the world. And so, that's at play here too, as far as the construct of the album. They wanted to do something that was, again, more commercially accessible. And, it's actually a fairly simplistic album thematically and lyrically, which is a great departure from what they were doing in the 90s. But they pull this off without it sounding really elementary. And I totally agree. It's a pop album, but it doesn't come off being as simplistic as what
Mhm.
one might perceive a pop album to be.
Yeah. And it's like it's almost like this is how U2 writes a pop song, and it still sounds like U2 and still has it's almost, even if it's lighter, quote unquote, than bad or the pathos of Red Hill Mining Town or whatever. It's still U2, and it's just in a different, almost in a pop sounding way, which I love the fact that I've heard Bono say many times, I don't apologize. I don't want to apologize for being on the radio or for writing a successful pop song. And I think he wrestled with that at different points because, you know, he's so self-important and all of that. But why don't we just jump in and talk about
Yep.
song by song?
Yep.
All right. The album starts with track 1, which is Beautiful Day.
It's a beautiful day. So let it get away. It's a beautiful day. Touch me. Take me to that other place. Teach me. I know I'm not a hopeless case.
What do you think, Don?
Like most good lead tracks do, this one announces again that this is not the same U2 of the '90s. I think it's an outstanding opening track to an album. It has a great melody. The song is about a man who's lost everything but still finds joy in what he still has. So
Right.
you're right. This 9/11 was kind of booked in between two great artists. Springsteen's The Rising, which came out in 2002, I believe, and then this, which came out in 2000. The theme of this song, again, they didn't plan it this way, but it really fits in well with this 9/11 theme. It's about a man who has lost everything, but still finds joy in what he has. I think Americans were being challenged at this point. Where is the beautiful day?
Mhm.
And I'm not going to put this song up on a great pedestal and say this song changed America. But, in a small way, I think it's a very impactful opening track when it's placed against the backdrop of 9/11.
Yeah, it's a joyful song. It's an anthem. It's a positive hymn. Like, again, this is not deep and heady stuff. It's joyful, finding joy. And like we've been alluding to, if this is not U2, I don't know what is. Losing everything but finding joy in what you have. It's a great joyful song, and the background vocals and the layering, the production is exquisite, and I think that's what makes me that makes me respond to it. The video too. The video did so much to bring out that kind of triumphant, joyful sound. Right? It's the perfect opening track to an album, especially like this, that's reintroducing the band to the pop music charts, to a whole new generation, to America, basically, because they kind of had gone down this. It was like a troubled teenager that went away and did a couple of albums that weren't the same as what happened to U2, man. They got weird. Oh, here they're back, and they're
Yeah,
nicer than
yeah,
ever, right?
yeah, yeah.
They're nicer than ever. So I think it's a perfect pop song. I just think it's a nice way to reboot everything. It's nice poetry. The heart is a bloom, shoots up
Mhm.
through the stony ground. You're out of luck. The traffic's stuck. You're not moving. But you found a friend, someone you could lend a hand in return for grace. The sky falls, but you feel like it's a beautiful day. Don't let it get away. Find that joy.
One of the things that I think is really difficult for artists to do, and he's talked about this. We have a whole genre of music geared toward depression and people who are sad and despondent. And
You mean the blues?
the blues, yeah. So we don't really have a huge genre for music that is for excitement and contentment and joy. And So I think it's a lot harder for artists to write music about that, particularly to do that with some depth,
Yeah.
with a melody that conveys that message and it not coming off as being superficial.
Yeah,
I think they
because that's
accomplished
the
that
thing.
here.
I think you're right. That's the thing with Christian music, contemporary Christian music. It's got that sheen on it. That you can tell. It's like, okay, there's something about it that comes off. I don't know how to put my finger on it. It's easier to express other emotions than joy. Now, don't get me wrong. Listen, Handel's Messiah, greatest piece of music, arguably in history, right? It's about joy. So it might be harder, which makes when it succeeds all that much more impressive. Maybe.
Very much agree.
I just compared Beautiful Day to Handel's Messiah.
Handel's Messiah, yeah.
Yep. Both of us waiting for the other to say something, just looking at each other.
It's like two people getting on an elevator. No, you go. No, you go. No, you go. Meanwhile, the door closes and it goes up. That's funny. That's funny.
Oh, guess what? Beautiful Day won Record of the Year in 2001. Okay? So the album came out. It's almost the end of the year 2000. All right? And Beautiful Day was such a huge hit that it won Record of the Year for 2001. That's a fact. That's why you associate it with 2001, because it basically was the end of 2000. Anyway, that was a triumphant return to relevance for U2. And like we said, I think it's a pop music version of them, and it's exactly what the band should sound like at this stage. At least one version of that.
Yeah, it's not a pop song that it's a good pop song. Sometimes people who are very critical of mainstream music frown upon this kind of stuff. I don't think you could frown upon this song. I think it has depth and it has a great hook. And I just don't see that there's anything wrong with those two coexisting. I'm actually often intrigued that you can convey sort of a deeper thought and overlay that with a melody that has a great hook. I'm always intrigued how those two intersect.
Yeah, they did it. They pulled it off. So that is track 1, Beautiful Day.
Track 2 is Stuck in a Moment You Can't Get Out Of.
These tears are going nowhere, baby. You got to get yourself together. You got stuck in a moment, and now you can't get out of it. Don't say that later will be better. Now you're stuck in a moment, and you can't get out of it.
Song written about the suicide of Michael Hutchence. What say you?
Well, I like it. And I don't like to listen to it very often, but I like it. It's one of those that kind of like sometimes you can't make it on your own, that I like the idea of it more than the song itself, and that I appreciate it and I feel it very deeply, but I might skip it. And then you feel bad. You're like, oh no, I don't want to skip it. What does that mean? I don't care? No, I mean, it's definitely a good song. I mean, it's a gospel song. It's truly beautiful. The horns are great. And I think that they're so barely used toward the very end that I think it's perfect the way they're just brought in a little bit. I would like to hear a different arrangement to see maybe if they could put more horns in the song and if that would turn out better or not. But I mean, the background vocals are done by, do you know who did the background?
Yeah, and I know who also did the background vocals, and thankfully that was not included on the cut, and that was Mick Jagger and his daughter.
Yeah, how weird is that?
Oh.
We'd like to come in and record some background vocals for you. They didn't put them on the records, but instead, Daniel Lanois and Brian Eno can be heard on the background vocals. How does Mick Jagger get cut out of the record? Isn't that funny?
Yeah. How does that conversation work when you tell Mick Jagger that, thanks, but we're not gonna put this on the album?
I mean, it's fine, and I'm sure that there's good enough reason.
Yeah. That probably, yeah.
Michael Hutchence, a rock star, a superstar, and I remember, you listened to Michael Hutchence and NXS, and so did I, and we were fans of theirs, and yet, what's it like to be a peer of theirs, or of someone who's a celebrity who dies, much less a rock star who dies? We're sad because it seems like a tragic loss, and no more music from that person, and it just makes us sad. But here's a deeply personal, hypothetical conversation that's some pretty painful regret that he must have felt, saying, I wish I could have had this chance to talk to him.
Yeah, I used to think that this, for whatever reason, I used to think that this was written about an actual conversation that they had, but I later discovered that it was fictitious.
Yeah.
Not that this is an NXS podcast, but golly, what a stage presence.
Oh, man.
I saw them at 87, and my gosh, I mean, he, as far as the stage presence, I would put him up there with any of the greats when it comes to being able to just command an audience.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Morrison or Freddie Mercury, or people like that. Just amazing stage presence.
Completely
This
agree.
makes me want to go back and listen to NXS now.
I know. And I saw them, I don't know, 89, 88, somewhere in there. And it was at Louisville Gardens, which is just a little arena. And it was standing room only, or, festival seating, whatever you call it. And it was just crazy, sweaty and great. Like everybody was just into it. They were at their peak. It was after Kick. And so, geez, I mean, he was such a great singer and presence. You look at the older, if you see sometimes on MTV, if you see sometimes, go back on YouTube and watch an old video from their early days. He doesn't have that same swagger, and that he grew into that. Yeah,
particularly on Kick.
Yeah.
This is our Listen Like Thieves podcast, where we talk about NXS, all things
in excess. So that's a song that I like. I think it's a strange placement, though, for the song, with such a somber undertone, for it to be the second song on an album. Again, does that matter these days? To me, it still does. And, does that matter to you?
Yes, it matters. I don't think retrospectively, it doesn't seem to matter a lot, because this album is kind of almost laid out in a similar fashion to How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. You've got that slow kind of bluesy gospel song as track 2 on How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. Sometimes you can't make it on your own.
Yeah.
So maybe retrospectively it doesn't stick out in my mind as much. But this is a different kind of album. It's an album that was written and recorded to be, and I hate to keep using this term, but very accessible. So you hit them with Beautiful Day, then you come back with a song that's also very accessible. So
I'm going to go ahead and Google synonyms for accessible, so we can have that handy. Reachable, attainable, approachable, convenient, within reach, available, on hand, hospitable, agreeable. There's a good word for it. It's a good word, accessible.
Yeah, I don't know. What other word could you use?
Relatable.
Listenability?
Relatable.
Relatable? Yeah, relatable's not bad.
Within reach. Okay.
That'd be a good YouTube phrase.
Yeah, it would. But then it would be a long song title, and it would be something like, "Today is the feeling I have, which is called," parentheses, "within reach."
Yes. You've got to have something. There has to be a parenthetical inclusion there. Yeah.
All right. So moving on. This is Rock and Roll Doggies podcast with two lifelong friends breaking down music that's been important in their lives. Jason here and Don. And track 3 on All That You Can't Leave Behind from U2. Track 3, Elevation.
Maybe you can educate my mind. Explain all these controls. Can't sing, but I've got soul. The goal is elevation. I'm all digging in a hole, digging up my soul now. Going down excavation. I and I in the sky. You make me feel like I can fly so high.
Don, what do you think?
Again, if you want to compare it to how to dismantle an atomic bomb, it reminds me of Vertigo.
Yes.
It's a heavy guitar sound. So I'm going to throw this back to you. If you were organizing this album and putting tracks in order, would this have been your lead track?
No.
Or would you have opened with Beautiful Day?
I think Beautiful Day, and I would have put Elevation after it. I would have, just because I feel like just the way I always remember albums growing up was like, you know, Rockin' Song number 1, and then Rockin' Song number 2, and then slow it down. I would have put Elevation after Beautiful Day.
I don't know if you're like this, but I see albums in my head. I see how they fit together in my head as much as I
do.
hear them. You know, it's that type A part of me, but I see how things fit together, almost like pieces of a puzzle. But I digress.
What do you think of the song Elevation?
I've never been a huge fan of it, and they play it. It's a staple, I guess, at live shows, and has been for years and years. I don't know. Maybe it's the distorted guitar maybe it's the distorted guitar and the fact that lyrically it's kind of almost redundant. I've got no self-control, been living like a mole, started out like a cigar, strung out like a guitar. Maybe you could educate my mind, explain all these controls. I don't know.
How's that repetitive? None of those words are the same.
Well, I guess it's kind of the flow or the timing of all that just seems just like it's almost like it's choppy, I think, too.
It's hip hop driving a big car.
I don't know. I think that it's
sing-songy.
Going down excavation, I in the sky, you make me feel like I can fly so high. Elevation. I just don't think that there's a lot here lyrically that carries the song.
It's just a fun song.
Yeah. And you know, that's kind of the gist of the album, though, in some ways.
I mean, this is a party song. This is like, you know, this is a great groove. That's just a buzzy guitar, bossy, and percussion, and just, you know, it's repetitive, sing along, blah blah lyrics that, again, not changing anyone's life, but just let it out, man. This is the opening song of this tour. I don't know if did you see them on this tour? I did.
Yes.
And so the lights were all up, and this song comes on, and everybody is jumping in place, and it's a crowd pleasing song. It's like the "We Will Rock You," the arena shaking kind of just feel good song. I think it's good, and it's lightweight. I love it. It's fun, and it's a great groove.
It's I think I would like it more if I could more succinctly, or if I could create some sort of storyline around the song. I mean, if you were to kind of sum this up, you know, you would just say it's just about someone elevating. It's about elevating someone's passion.
But why do you always have to have a subject? Why do you always have to have, like, it's about like the narrative, like it's about a person who wants to elevate? No, I mean, it's a feeling. It doesn't have to have a subject and predicate.
Right. But neither does bad, and neither does.
Right, exactly the point. And bad makes you feel bad. This makes you feel good. This is designed to make you feel good. It is intended to be a light relief.
I just wish that there was more to the song lyrically where I could latch on to it, because there's not a lot there musically that I latch onto. So if I'm not latching onto the music,
You
I've
don't like the
got
guitar
to-
sound?
it's not really. I'm
Okay,
not.
well-
I'm not big on this distorted sound there.
You don't like
so
that
therefore,
funky-
I'm turning to the music. I'm turning toward the
Okay.
lyrics to carry the song, because you got to have the music or the lyric to carry the song. So to me, the music's not carrying the song, so I'm turning to the lyric to carry the song, and
But it's the
I kind
same
of
thing
walk
as
away feeling a bit empty.
it's so much like Beautiful Day in that it's about joy. Won't you lift me out of these blues? Tell me something true I believe in. This is a song about joy, that little appreciated genre of music that we don't have enough of, that no one really does that well. I think this is very well done. That funky pedal driven guitar, distorted, and hey man, this is sure it's cotton candy. It's you're chewing bubble gum. You know what it is, but you still want some. And I allow that because I love the feeling it gives me.
But Beautiful Day is twice the song that Elevation is.
It's intended to be light relief among serious songs. And
I wish it had the melody that it was equivalent to Beautiful Day. I wish the melody was that good. I might
it
latch
is like
onto it more.
Vertigo. It is like Vertigo,
Yeah,
and it is
it
like
is,
get on your boots. And both of those
Yeah, you're
tracks
right.
I like.
I would
but
take
still
Vertigo
like it.
over this.
Well, you're like a mole digging in a hole. I dig this song, and so I think it's good that I'm able to tell you, the truth about it. You don't
Oh.
find the lyrics. You don't think the lyrics are as good. Why is Beautiful Day twice the song? They're both about the same thing, finding joy
Yeah, but
and just having a good time.
because there's more. First of all, there's more meat in Beautiful Day. The song has a lot of lyrical meat to it. You thought you'd found a friend to take you out of this place, someone you could lend a hand in return for grace. I don't know. You don't have a lyrical component in
Why do you have to have
Elevation that's as good as that?
If they're both songs about joy and the feeling of joy, why do you have to have any lyrics that mean anything? What about the song Celebration by
Well, if
Kool
that's the
and Gang?
case, then let's just 86 the lyrics, and we'll just do an instrumental track.
Well, why? Why does it have to be that way? Why can't you just have fun with it? Like, Take the Money and Run by Steve Miller. It's a fun song. Who cares what the
Sure.
story is about?
Again, the music, even lyrically and musically, Beautiful Day is twice the song this song is.
Get Down Tonight, KC and the Sunshine Band. Get Lucky by Daft Punk. These are feel-good songs. Flo Rida, Good Feeling. That song, what is so stupid? What is that? But it feels good to hear it. Okay.
I don't think there's a huge hook. I think the hook in Beautiful Day is greater than that in Elevation. And I think the distorted guitar actually may kind of hide what hook there is there.
I'm going to hide your hook.
Oh,
Okay. Well, there we go. I mean,
I'm not saying
I'm
not saying it's a rotten song by any stretch. I would again take Vertigo over this 9 times out of 10 for whatever that's worth.
It's funny we keep talking about and comparing this album to Atomic Bomb, but we really can't use that as a reference because it hasn't happened
I know.
yet.
I know. You're right.
We know
Right.
now, looking back,
Right.
but at the time, nobody was thinking that.
Right.
So,
We're living in the
okay.
future, but none of this has happened yet.
All right.
Track 4, Walk On. Unlike Elevation, I think this is one of the better tracks on the album. What do you got for me?
Walk On, great song. This is the snapshot of the album. Walk On is a love song, Bono says, about leaving a relationship for all the right reasons. So that's the lyrical subtext. And there are some wonderful, inspiring lyrics in here. But
Mhm.
again, to me, it makes me feel good. The music. I like the spoken intro. I like that. I like the keyboards. I like the drums. And I also just think it is a great sound overall. It's not saccharine or overly positive. It's hopeful in the midst of difficulty, and all these things make it work so well. It is the cornerstone of the album, or like the axis. Tell the story of the activist that inspired the song "Walk On."
So Aung San Suu Kyi, I believe is how you pronounce her name. Basically, she is a political leader who was imprisoned for what you two believe to be rightful reasons. She was a proponent of freedom, which is referenced in the song. And I think as it turned out, she was being very complicit and tacit in her acceptance of things like violence and rape and even ethnic cleansing. And so now it's been pretty much universally accepted that who they thought she was is not who she was. So, and I think the band was embarrassed by that. Who wouldn't be? But, I think to the band's credit, they've been very, they put themselves out there for things like this. A lot of bands wouldn't do that. A lot of bands would sit on the sidelines and not take the chance to support someone like this. Obviously, they wound up with a little bit of egg on their face,
Mhm.
but again, this is who U2 is.
Yeah,
So,
that's
and
such a
again,
U2 thing to do.
they've been forthcoming, and hey, you know what? We missed the boat on this one. So
Mhm.
kudos to them for that. But it's still that aside, it's still a really good song. I'll go back to something you said though. I think you made some remark that the song, and I'm paraphrasing here, that it's a well written song that doesn't come off as being cheeky.
Yeah,
It's funny because 20 years ago you did not say that. I think your opinion on
I
this has
know.
changed.
It definitely has, and that's a great point because I was a different person 20 years
Yeah,
ago when this
yeah,
album came out.
yeah,
I was, a different person, and I thought different things about it. I believe that I wanted more substance or more
yeah.
seriousness and depth out of it, and I felt a little bit cheated by the album, that it was a little bit, that sounds really lightweight. And this song in particular, I remember thinking, wow, that sounds like the most, it just sounded like such a feel good song that
Yeah.
wasn't deep enough, right?
Yeah, because I remember you would say something like, how it was hackneyed. It was, oh, walk on, you got to keep trying harder, put your
Yeah,
head down, all
yeah,
those trite little,
yeah,
comments that people make. And I
right.
remember thinking, you know what, this is a really good song, but he does have a point there.
But
I
it's
thought that
okay.
then, yeah,
And
right,
so part of that too is that I've changed, and the music remains, what it is, but it evolves. I think of it in a different way now, and I don't have to. Nobody's making me, but it's more like, huh? I see this as a mature statement of where the band was at that time, and I caught up with them in age too, right? So now
yeah,
I understand a little bit more of where they were coming from. This is the centerpiece of the album, and it has a great sound and a great message and a great delivery. It encompasses a lot of the vibes of coming together around 9/11. There's a whole lot of that togetherness. There's a whole lot of hope in the midst of difficulty, and it's a twist on the whole idea of leaving it behind, and it's a twist on you can't take it with you, and also the gospel idea of leaving it all behind you for the sake of Christ. I did not realize this at the time, but it was a combination of two different songs originally. The whole bridge, I guess, of the home, don't know where it is, but I know we're
mhm,
going home.
mhm,
That was a separate song that they called Home, and Lily White apparently Lily White was hired to make final touches to the songs Walk On and Home. He said, oh, there's one has a great chorus, one has a great verse, and they should be one song together. That's the rough story that I've heard. And that's why it kind of sounds a little bit different, but I never realized, oh, wow, those could have been two different songs. That home part is just, to me, that's what wins the song for me, though, too, because that's just so lovely.
Hard to know what it is if you never had one home. I can say where it is, but I know I'm going home. That's where the heart is.
I would counter that Kite might be the centerpiece of the album, but those are semantics. But in defense of your take on this, say 20 years ago, you also not only have the benefit of 20 plus years of greater wisdom, but you also have 20 plus years of seeing the band's catalog since then. So this album may make more sense when it's put up against No Line on the Horizon and other albums that came afterwards. I think now the kind of the counterpoint to that is I think the band has stayed in this mode for far too long. They have, in a sense, made, and this is kind of a divergent point from talking about Walk On, but I think the band has made some variations of this album now for about 4 or 5 albums. They need to get back to doing something that is more cutting edge, but I digress. But this is a solid song, though. It's a well-written song. You know, we've talked about how there are no great lyrical moments here, but I think the song is built with a lot of passion. And I know it aches, in your heart it breaks, and you can only take so much. Walk On. That sounds a bit overused, but up against the music, that little snippet really works well.
Yeah, hard to know what it is if you've never had one. That's the quote.
Yes, that's another good one. Yes.
Yeah. Home, I can't say where it is, but I know I'm going home. And I always thought that's where the heart is. But the lyrics show that it says that's where the hurt is.
Yeah.
And either way it works. Right?
Yeah.
That's like living poetry. That's just good. To me, it's an obvious centerpiece of the album, but I think it's funny you say, oh, well, arguably centerpiece of the album. But still, look what you got, though. These first, 5 songs, Beautiful Day, Elevate 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a just bam, 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 strong material. Good songs, no duds. And so we roll into the song Kite.
Who's to say where the wind will take you? Who's to say what it is will break you? I don't know which way the wind will blow. Who's to know when the time has come around? Don't wanna see you cry. I know that this is not goodbye.
And I know you have a lot to say about it, so what do you think?
Did you know that this was the first song on the album to be recorded?
That's what I heard.
You heard correctly.
I think you told me that, so
Yes. I'm well connected within the band, yes.
Googie.
Edge believed this was about Bono's father. It's one of those where maybe a friend can tell you something that you don't know about yourself. Bono has said he wrote it about, I guess, a kind of like a metaphor or a fictitious event where he was flying a kite with his daughters, and the kite is being tossed by the wind and it's crashing, which I guess is like a metaphor for the experience of life.
Yeah.
I love the slide guitar in this song.
Yeah.
I love the slide.
It's pretty good for sure. This is a song I love more than I did in the beginning. This is like the most improved player to me on the album. But how about that in the beginning? What's that string? Is that a cello in the beginning? I always think I'm going to look that up and see.
Now you've put me on the spot because I can't play the intro in my head right now.
Well, let's just
I can't-
play it right now. Okay, so that's definitely a cello. Cello.
That may be a violin. It's too high to be a cello. I don't know if it's an electric violin or a viola. I think it's definitely too high to be a cello.
Viola?
Yeah, it might be.
I don't know. Maybe it's the sound of a stringed instrument as played by a mellotron, which is a device that replicates stringed instruments. Okay.
I did about 3 years of violin back in the
You
day.
did?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I never knew
Did-
that.
And it,
Is that why you were so into Kansas?
yeah.
How long?
In fact, it was about that time I started growing my beard out really long. Yes.
All right.
Did about a year of piano before that. Yeah, yeah.
This is Rock and Roll Doggies, and time for a break. We'll be right back.
Looking for ways to save on your energy bills? AES Indiana has you covered. From smart thermostats to home energy assessments, we offer simple solutions to keep your home comfortable and your costs down. AES can help you save money and energy with kits, tips, rebates, and more. Visit aesindiana.com/ways to save to learn more about how we can help you save money. AES Indiana, helping you discover real ways to save.
And now back to Rock and Roll Doggies. But it really comes in, it's a cool intro, and then like you said, he slides all over that song with the guitar, and I love the swirling sound. It almost has this feeling of a kite being blown about,
Yeah.
blown by the wind, right?
It's hypnotic.
It is. This is where you start to get some of the best lyrics on the album that really digs in. And I always thought it seems to be about his father, given the fact that he was ill at that time, but also it seems like it's written to his children, maybe, because you don't need me anymore. Things like that, little lyrical phrases like that. That is it kind of maybe both? It has one of the best moments on the entire album, the soaring proclamation vocal when he says, "I'm a man. I'm not a child. A man who sees the shadow behind your eyes."
I'm a man. I'm not a child. A man who sees the shadow behind your eyes.
That fills me with a lot of emotion to hear it, just because anybody who comes out with "I'm a man" with that boisterous energy is very emotional. But then it has to be about the father. I think about that with my own father who passed, and then just the whole idea of the passage of life, like you mentioned earlier, kind of considering your own mortality, the shadow behind your eyes. Perfect for this stage of where he is in life, because he also has these kids that he seems to be addressing too.
This is, I think, this album and perhaps this song may be the apex of his vocal ability. I
Yeah.
think that he is vocally, he's at a really, really good spot on this album. And you're right. I'm a man. I'm not a child. He really vocally he really just lets it all out on that little snippet.
I also was going to ask you about the little spoken word rap outro. What's your
Yeah.
feeling? How does that hit you now in the year? How did it hit you then, and how does it hit you 20 years later?
There's not a whole lot about this song really that I'm going to take issue with. I think it's just a really, really good song. I don't have.
Did I?
I like the
Okay.
outro.
Did I waste it? Not so much I couldn't taste it. Life should be fragrant. Rooftop to the basement. The last of the rock stars when hip hop drove the big cars. In the time when new media was the big idea. That was the big idea.
It's funny because I guess it would be like somebody maybe in the 80s or 90s or maybe in the 70s or 80s writing a song about dialing somebody on the phone. When you hear that now that's you're dealing with a song that has somewhat of a technological disconnect from where we are now.
Yeah.
Nobody refers to multimedia as new media anymore.
I mean, it's a timestamp.
Yeah.
It definitely is like
unintentionally, I think, but it is.
Yeah. The idea of new media was the big idea. It's true. And it's kind of it doesn't come off as cheesy and embarrassing now because that's what we called it back then. And what about hip hop drove the big cars? What does that mean?
I've always associated that in a literal interpretation. The whole, hip hop, notorious B.I.G. whomever.
So and
driving
we talked
around
about
in
this
big vehicles
and really big cars. You don't think it's a metaphor like
I
when
don't.
hip hop? I think it's so metaphorically, hip hop was the biggest music genre, music format, whatever, and they drove the big cars. That's what I think. It's a kind of an analogy of being the big kid on the block, right? Driving a big car. But you think it's that they really drove big cars. And I mean, is this important? I don't know, but it's funny that you took it literally and I didn't.
Yeah, I guess I take it literally too, in context with everything else that's in that verse. I don't see anything metaphorically in the rest of the verse. It makes me to think that he's kind of coming at this whole closing in the literal sense. It's interesting though when you recite this, when you started reciting the lyrics, it had this kind of hip hop feel to it.
Well, that's the way I deliver it because I'm from the street.
But yeah.
So,
By the way, I love the new Gold Tooth. But yet when it's delivered musically, it's like there's that hip hop component there, but it's still delivered as a smooth continuation of the song.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't sound like he breaks out some awkward rap. I also heard somebody say one time that it's an intentional nod to the flirtation they had with dance music on pop and on Zooropa. Kind of like they went into those sounds the past two albums. And so now he's kind of looking back at that as like, and this is kind of a chuckle, tongue-in-cheek look back at, remember hip hop? I don't think that's true. I think there's people that
Right, that may be a stretch.
Have too much time on their hands, but but still, we're the ones doing a podcast, so.
But I will stand corrected on one thing that I said as I look at the lyrics. Rooftop to the basement is a metaphor, so there is a metaphorical component already there before we hit when hip hop drove the big cars.
Well,
Well, I still don't.
Okay.
I still won't go there as far as that being metaphor. But that is actually an argument that maybe was intended.
I'm not
going to
argue about it. A metaphor, not so much I couldn't taste it. You're not really literally tasting something.
Yeah.
Life should be fragrant, not literally fragrant. Okay. It's not just the basement. Like it's all metaphor. Who's to say where the wind will take you? The whole idea of the song's a metaphor. Kite.
Well, that's true too.
The whole thing's a metaphor. So. Yeah. I wonder about you, Boomhauer.
But I was actually looking at just that segment. But yeah, you're right. There's more of a metaphorical component in context there. So I'll grant you a point for that one.
Thank you for granting. All right, where are we at? This is Rock and Roll Doggies. That is Don, and I am Jason. We are two lifelong friends breaking down music that's been important in our lives. It's U2, All That You Can't Leave Behind from the year 2000, going through track by track.
We are on track 6 in a little while.
In a little while, this hurt will hurt no more. I'll be home, love. When the the night takes a deep breath, and the daylight has no end. If I come crawling home, will you be there?
We go from a really strong track to, I think, one of the weaker tracks on the album, a song that allegedly Joey Ramone listened to right before he died. And I mean right before he assumed room temperature, according to what I've read. It's like he just listened to the song and that was it.
I like that fact, but I didn't like hearing it every 5 minutes when the time it happened. It seemed like everyone was reporting that same fact. It is the last song Joey Ramone ever heard. Not taking anything away from the somber beauty of that fact. So it's weak. It's a weak song to you?
Relative to the other songs on the album. Yeah, but there are times though where I listen to the song and I go, you know what? I mean, there is some beauty there.
I don't think it's the best song. I don't think it's as strong as some other ones on the album. I remember being super annoyed that it was a big hit on the radio station that I worked at, which was a AAA format, adult album alternative. So it was like a really big hit. And I think it was a top 40 hit as well. But yeah, it was one of those things that I like it better now than I did before. I understand it now to be written for his daughter or daughters. And that's the way I take it, because I learned what the word pram means, which I think is one of those cool British words that we don't have in this country. Since she was a little girl with Spanish eyes, when I saw her in a pram, they pushed her by. My, how you've grown. Well, it's been a little while. So you could say, oh, they pushed her by? Who's they? Pushing your own daughter by you? Like, okay, no, poetic license. I just think it's really cool that he thinks back to his daughter or daughters when they were young and how he's missed out on a lot. I think there's a regret in this song of a man who has spent his life on the road, on tour, and it feels a melancholy spot that, you know, he missed a lot of their growing up time. And to me, that's what the song's about now. He reflects on the choice that he's made in life. All right. He was the young man who dreamed he could fly, and his career was taking a rocket ship to the stars, right? That's a metaphor. Again, going back to a metaphor, Don, is comparing something to something that is real in life and making a comparison to something that
I've got
a
something
rocket
here.
ship
Would you want it now or later?
Yeah, no, but his success came at a price, and he's aware of how artificial his quote unquote success can feel. And not in a regretful way, but I think he understands that there's been a little sacrifice. And it's a sweet song because it looks back at his little girls and talking about, in a little while I'll be home. And it does have some really nice words. Listen to this. This goes down in the list of some of the best lyrics on the album. When the night takes a deep breath and the daylight has no air. I just love that. It sounds like something out of Exit, right?
I think it's a daylight has no end.
What'd I say? Yeah. Yeah, when the daylight has no end. Yeah, sorry. You're right. And so again, I think this song is nice, and it's a plus song to me. Doesn't change my life. It's so simple that I wonder what it would sound like with a full band, or not that it doesn't have a full band, but you know, with a full treatment. Okay, like Atlantic City on Nebraska is good. Atlantic City with a full band is fantastic. I wonder if they ratcheted this up to a higher energy level, would it make me happier?
It would be nice to hear a full band version of this. When I hear this, though, he lives on a star that's dying in the night and follows in the trail, the scatter of light. Every time I hear that, I think about Mark Kelly, because Mark Kelly was the U.S. Senator from Arizona who's an astronaut. And,
Oh, yeah.
and during the 360 tour, they would, bring him up and, beam him down. He would introduce a song.
Huh. Yeah.
And every
That's
time I
pretty
hear
cool.
that, I think about Mark Kelly and the whole, because they were, obviously really into the space theme on that tour. So
Yeah, that's right.
I
So,
skip over
you know,
this track more than any other tracks on the album.
you skip over Wild Honey? I mean, Little While?
Yeah. Yep. Listen to it.
Eh.
Yep. Very little.
So by this point in the album, are you still feeling like this is kind of a U2 light pop version of U2, not super meaty?
I don't know. It's hard to answer that question because I know the album top to bottom and what's on the back end. I will say that I think the back end's heavier than the front end.
Back end. Back end is heavy. All right, well, let's move on then. The next track is Wild Honey.
You can go there if you please, wild honey. And if you go there, go with me, wild honey.
Would you like to give me your thoughts on Wild Honey?
John the Baptist was known to eat wild field honey,
Yes.
according to Mark 1:6. Just
Locusts,
throwing that
I
out there.
believe. Yeah.
Yeah. And locust, yes. Yeah. And if you go there, go with me. Harkens back to Where the Streets Have No Name.
Hmm. Yeah.
I really like this song. It's maybe I view this like you do Elevation. I think it's a really nice hook. Maybe some people throw it away. It's not a song that is. They certainly don't play this on a regular basis. I think it's to me. I've always interpreted it as his crying out in recognition of sort of God's majesty and protection.
Hmm.
And so in verse 3 kind of appears to be that he's kind of man's search for that place.
Mhm.
And this is, by the way, I think it's the kind of almost there's a trilogy here. So you have Wild Honey, Peace on Earth, and When I Look at the World. So, and this kind of supports what I just said, that I think the album is heavier on the back end lyrically or thematically than the front end, because now all of a sudden we're getting into issues like even the last half you're dealing with grace, When I Look at the World, Peace on Earth, Wild Honey. There's a lot of religious imagery going on the back end, I think, that was not there on the front end. So what do you have for this one?
I like it. I think it's a fun song. It almost sounds like it's a B-side just because it's not, I don't know. What does that mean? Does that mean it's less of a song? No, it's just something about, it is such a neat little song, but it's not, again, we've been conditioned to expect bad and to expect, big statements. And this is a love song. And to me, the way he phrases this is that our love is as old as time, or even older. I could taste you even then. He has loved her since forever, before time even existed. And there's a couple of phrasings that I think are really interesting. Are you still growing wild with everything tame around you? It feels like they're kind of growing up, and is the writer, is Bono, wondering if she, Allie, I guess, is still the same free spirit she used to be, or is she held on to that? And if so, if she's still the same person, if she goes there, he wants to go there too, like you referenced. If you go there, go with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it's a super romantic song when you get into these kind of thoughts. I think he's wondering in a lot of places in this album how celebrity and world tours and being in this band has affected his family life. And this one might be, has it affected the great love of his life, his partner, his wife? Is she still the same person? Has his celebrity changed her, and how's that affected it? But I mean, I don't think that this is not a tragic song, and it's not a down song. It's more like just, hey, let's make sure we still have this connection, because I have loved you since forever, even before time began. And there's just a great little, I used to call it the unknown lyric. It's the part where, let's just play that part. The lyrics are, "What is soul? Love me, give me soul." Man, that's just some essence right there. And I don't think I knew that for years, what the lyrics were. Just kind of, I don't know. I just sang something. I don't even know. And right? Isn't that weird? Because we, like you said, we know the album back to front. But what is soul? Love me, give me soul. He needs that deep connection with his partner. So it's a better song than I really thought it was in the beginning. And like I said, I've evolved my opinion of this album, and this is a good example.
It's interesting that you interpret this to be his song to his wife. And my interpretation is that it's almost like a song of praise, a psalm in a sense. So, for example, did I know you? Did I know you even then, before the clocks kept time, before the world was made, before the cruel sun? You were shelter. You were my shelter and my shade. You know, you talk about the love between a man and a woman, and between man and God. There's so much overlap there when you talk about husband and wife and relationship of man and God, that it's easy to interpret that both ways. And I think there's a very viable, plausible explanation for both of those perspectives.
Yeah, you're right. It could be either one.
If I read that from your perspective, I would go, yeah, no, I get that. I get that, why he would sing that about his wife. And then I turn around and I read it again and I go, but I also get it as a statement of prayer.
So you,
which is kind of why I prefaced it as being the whole Wild Honey and John the Baptist, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Also, it's part of the spiritual trilogy that you mentioned on the album.
Right.
But by being able to apply it to either God or your significant other, you just described every contemporary Christian song of the 80s and 90s. The whole Jesus is my boyfriend genre. Amy Grant is singing either to her love interest or to God. It could be either one. No, I mean, that's why it's good for crossover. Yeah.
Yes.
So interesting. That is Wild Honey.
Track 8, Peace on Earth.
Jesus, can you take the time to throw a drowning man a line? Peace on earth. Tell the ones who hear no sound, whose sons are living in the ground. Peace on earth. No, who's the wise? No one cries like a mother cries for peace on earth. She never got to say goodbye, to see the color in his eyes. Now he's in the dirt. Peace on earth.
Definitely one of the highlights on this album for me. I know you're a bit lukewarm on it. I think it is a very, very personal, it's like perhaps one of the more intrapersonal lines in U2's catalog, where he starts mentioning actual names of people who died in the bombing. The town of Omagh, Ireland, which was bombed, was in, I believe it was in the 90s, a town of about 20,000. Just a lot of really good writing this song. It's just like, there are times where he just takes pouring his heart out, just raises the bar on this. Jesus, can you take the time to throw a drowning man a line? Peace on earth. It's so raw. They're reading, this has always just grabbed me. They're reading names out over the radio, all the folks the rest of us won't get to know. Sean and Julia, Gareth, Ann and Brita. Their lives are bigger than any big idea. And then he goes back in, Jesus, can you take the time to throw a drowning man a line? And it's just, there's so much, it's such a sharp, piercing gut-wrenching song. And I like the way it starts out. That whole synth intro where it's almost like a skip that you just kind of slide right into the song and you're there.
It sounds like church bells to me, that intro. I've always thought that.
I can see that. I can
It
see where
has a little feeling. I'm not even sure that I thought, oh, that sounds like literal bells, but it had the vibe, the feeling of, oh, that's kind of got some chimey church bell sound, which fits.
and then the first lyric is heaven on earth. So, I mean, maybe there's a little bit of a tie-in with that, sonically to lyrically.
I've come to appreciate it more because of the way you have expressed all of these things. And how about the line, she never got to say goodbye.
Oh, yeah.
To see the color in his eyes. Now he's in the dirt. That comes straight from the eulogy at the funeral of one of the victims of the bombing. And the Irish Times newspaper quoted his mother as saying, I never realized how green his eyes were.
Wow.
Just heartbreaking.
Ed just said this is the most bitter U2 song that they've ever written. And you hear sadness, but you do hear bitterness. There's a lot of bitterness in that song.
Yeah. Yeah, it does recall, and this is the first, maybe not the first time, this is one of the times on the album that it does kind of harken back to some of the last two albums' themes of doubting faith or of questioning God, where it's just like, Jesus, can you take the time, which to me harkens back to Wake Up Dead Man.
Wake Up Dead Man, right.
Exactly. You're right. It gets a little bit meatier toward the end of the album here, these last few tracks. So that's certainly a raw, honest, from the gut. Hey, Jesus. Hey, listen. Hey, can you maybe got a sec? Hey, can you take the time? And that's kind of makes me feel good that that's still there. And remember thinking that when I first heard the album, that, oh, good. Well, they didn't totally become the Backstreet Boys or something, right?
Jesus, in this song you wrote, the words are sticking in my throat, peace on earth. That's a nice line. Hear it every Christmas time, but hope and history won't rhyme, so what's it worth? That's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is real good. So heaven on earth, we need it now. I think that I appreciate that because it also fits with the idea of the gospel being about bringing God's kingdom to earth now, as opposed to, pie in the sky when you die, and that you get a reward in heaven, but that heaven on earth, we need it now. And that, again, shouting to the sky, saying, Jesus, oh, hello. How about something that we need in this life, which really is what Jesus preached about, was how to create God's kingdom here on earth, not to wait until after we die.
Right.
But that's what it says to me. Certainly a very powerful. And when you start saying the names, and again, you're going to remember that I thought it was super trite back in the day, and I did. And I've grown to really appreciate this album much more than I did back then. But I know this is one of the tracks you like the best on this album.
Yeah, I remember the concert right after 9/11. U2 appeared. They were in London. They appeared remotely. I think the show was being originated, I guess, in New York or somewhere in the U.S. And they performed the first part of this song, and then went straight into Walk On. It was one of those 9/11, commemorative shows with Natalie Imbruglia on backup vocals. I do remember that.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
I would not have been able to pull that name out for somebody that toured with them. Was that a bunch of different people, or just she was the?
Yeah, she was. I mean, she was already, doing her own thing and a successful commercial
Did
artist.
she open for them? Was she in support of them?
No, it was just she was truly. They were just on a set. They just recorded "Peace on Earth," no audience, transitioned into "Walk On," and she's on backup vocals, and then they cut away, and that's it.
You are listening to Rock and Roll Doggies, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Rock and Roll Doggies. Next track is a song called When I Look at the World.
When there's all kinds of chaos and everyone is walking lame, you don't even blink now, do you? Or even look away. So I try to be like you, try to feel it like you do, but without you it's no use. I can't see what you see when I look at the world.
You know I love this song. It's, to me, the most underappreciated song. When I Look at the World, really dives in. You have a lot of feel-good music and a lot of well-constructed pop music up front, and then you're getting into the last few songs are more serious, more questioning things, reality, faith, God, and to me, this is looking at the hypocrisy of others and wondering what is it about you that I don't get? How come you look at the world this way, and you go about your Ned Flanders life and everything's great, and that's how you look at the world. But when I look at it, it doesn't work for me. I can't be like you. I try to be like you, try to feel it like you do. When you walk in the room, oh, that little guitar riff, this part right here.
When I look at the world,
musically, I think it's great. I've heard people say it doesn't have a standout hook. It has kind of a melody that just lingers. To me, it's right there in my spot. I love it. It hits me the way that I want the whole album to be. I want the whole
Yes,
album to
yes.
to have that feeling.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I love this song because it questions the whole idea of the faith that some people have, and I've felt many times throughout my faith journey, pardon the expression, but that's what it is. You feel like, oh, well, that person has it easy. They don't ever wonder about things and question their own faith. And I don't wish I was like them, but I'm certainly not. Man, it just drives that point home. What about you?
So it's interesting because I think we both have some very cogent arguments or points, I should say, on why we view this song as we do. I actually, as you know, view this song in a much different light. I have always viewed this song as, interestingly, kind of as a follow-up to Peace on Earth. We talked about kind of the man shaking his fist at God, hey, God, Jesus, I'm still down here. Can you throw me a line? I kind of look at this song almost as a little bit of a continuation of that. I look at this as point blank, man, whomever that may be in this song, crying out to God, crying out to Jesus and saying, so I try to be like you, try to feel it like you do, but without you, it's no use. I can't see what you see when I look at the world. I'm in the waiting room. I can't see for the smoke. I think of you and your holy book when the rest of us choke. It's a really almost a very cynical, in my mind, approach to a bit of a faith crisis.
I definitely can see it that way too. And especially when you talk about when there's all kinds of chaos and everyone is walking lame.
Yes.
You don't even
Yes.
blink now,
Yes.
do you? You don't even look away.
You don't even turn away.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think you've got a great point there. And I don't think it's wrong. I can only say this is the way it's felt to me. And I can even take it both ways and feel it both ways to be like, there's something in me that hit the nerve of like the difference between me and other. And again, it's just because the way, I had that experience or feel that now I welcomed this because I thought, oh man, I hope and I know now looking back that Bono's faith crisis didn't get solved because it's not a solvable thing, and it's not a crisis like a bad thing. It's the push pull, the whole dynamic tension of, well, you can't have faith without doubt, and we all need to have that to strengthen our own, uh, soul. So this was welcome to me that I heard this, and I'm like, yes, this is the U2 that I so strongly identify with. This is the part of Bono's writing and wrestling with angels type thing that drew me to him and to them in the first place. So that's why I love it so much, and I could see it could be shaking your fist at the heavens as well. But to me, there's nothing that says, like, I think of you and your holy book. To me, that's a person, and there's something about that whole you and your holy book, the whole holier than thou religious person, super Christian, we used to call them, right? The idea that I can't see how you could be that way. That's how it happened for me, some 35 years ago when I first started to do my own deconstruction. Either way, it's a highlight of the album for me.
Yeah, this is, and you're right. This is, as we started digging into Peace on Earth, I started thinking, man, what if the whole album had that much meat to it? What if there were songs that were really well constructed melodies, and they really hit you in the gut and gave you a lot to think about?
Do you wish that In a Little While and Wild Honey had been better songs? Is that what happened?
I guess, it's kind of a tough question to answer, because we would have been without. I mean, is Beautiful Day a bit superficial and cheeky and too poppy? Maybe, but I don't want to live without it. I don't want to live without. I don't want to live without Wild Honey.
You want to live without Elevation, but
I would strike Elevation off there, perhaps. But then the question becomes: it's like if you're picking for the NCAA tournament. Okay, well, so you say Washington State doesn't deserve to be there. Okay, fine. Who does? Who has a better resume than Washington State? Washington State may not be very good in your eyes, but who's better? Same here.
And the whole right. And the whole expectation, The Ground Beneath Her Feet. Should that have been an album cut or a B-side like it is, right? And so what if Wild Honey was presented as a B-side and later released as part of a box set, and we'd never heard it before? It'd be like, oh wow, that was a really good B-side. Lowered expectations, right? So it's all silly kind of mental gymnastics. Either the music and either you like it, it grabs you in the gut, or not. And I find myself thinking that maybe Wild Honey and In a Little While weren't my favorite ones off the album, because they and maybe others just weren't as serious or meaty. I feel like when I look at The World, it was like there's the U2 that it just sounds like the older previous versions. And that was comforting to me.
And I think we have to cut the band some slack. It's easy for us to sit here and say, well, they maybe should have had an album that had more cuts like When I Look at the World or Peace on Earth. But I mean, that's difficult. Writing songs, writing music is difficult. You don't just say, oh, well, I don't know why in the world they couldn't put out 10 songs that were The Streets Have No Name. That's just not the way that stuff works.
These are so funny
songs. It's just there's some songs that are going to be better than others because that's how art works.
Yeah, right. No, write another one. Write another great song.
Right. Yeah.
Write another one that's just like With or Without You. Do another one like that. It's embarrassing to almost hear myself say that.
I know it is when I think about it like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Pull something out of you that pull something out of your soul that I want to come out of it. Not what's really coming out of it. Right.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine the Beatles? I mean, even the Beatles, I mean, you listen to Abbey Road, or every song is not high level on Abbey Road.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
yeah.
pretty. This isn't like basketball where you say, well, just practice a little bit more and you can, you'll become a good free throw shooter.
Yeah.
No, that's not.
No. And it's
not how
spoiled.
this stuff works.
If you're spoiled by greatness, then you expect greatness, and it becomes a standard, and then it's no longer great.
And you don't appreciate how difficult it is.
I mean, come on.
Think about how many artists would like. Think about let's say the song is stuck in a moment you can't get out of, and we go, okay, well, they could have written something better than. How many artists would like to write something that good?
I know.
I mean, if that's one of the, and I'm not saying it is, but for the sake of argument, if that's one of the worst songs on the album, my gosh.
I know.
I mean, there are 99% of the artists out there who would love to be able to write and record something that's that good. I mean, it's a high standard they've set for themselves.
It's like Roger. It's like Roger Ebert one time said. The great movie critic, when The Color of Money came out. It was the movie in the mid '80s with Paul Newman and Tom Cruise, and it was directed by the great Martin Scorsese. And Roger Ebert said, "I like this movie, but I judge it more harshly because it's Martin Scorsese, and I expect." I mean, he had just done like Raging Bull. And these masterpiece movies. And so he's like, if someone else had done this movie, I would have thought, hey, that's really great. But because it was done by Scorsese, it's not great to me. It's a different scale. And that's the way we are a lot of times with this artist.
A couple things just in closing for when I look at the world. Tell me, what do you see? Tell me what's wrong with me. I think is from the way I viewed this song, is the clincher moment where he says, so he's wailing at God and saying, I don't get this stuff. I think of your holy book when the rest of us choke. And at the end, he recognizes his own fallacy by saying, what's wrong with me? So there's that almost that recognition of I'm pretty upset because you're not coming and meeting me on my terms. But at the very end, he's saying, but what's wrong with me? Now,
I take it the other way. I think he's being sarcastic. So what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong, huh? And it's a fine line there, because at that point you could almost be feeling, guilt or humility, that you're thinking, what really is wrong with me? But in that argument, in the heat of passion there, I think he's saying, so what's wrong with me? Almost like, again, going back to the comparison to the super Christian that I think it is. It's like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I, we're nuancing it too much, but I do think it's a great line. It's a watershed line to where it could be, it's almost a biblical kind of moment where you could see that from an Old Testament character, looking to the heavens and saying, what's wrong with me? What am I missing here?
Now, having said that, to pitch my perspective, I will, in somewhat of a spoiler alert, say that Bono has said, quote, this was written from the point of view of someone who is having a crisis of faith, looking at someone who has built their house upon the rock. Now, does that mean that they're looking at that person as a kind of a holier than thou person?
Sounds
or
like
are they
my
looking at that? It does. Or, I mean, now think about it. There may be three perspectives here. It's your perspective. It's the way I see it. Or it's, hey, this person truly is living a high life, a very holy life, truly a holy life. Why is he there and I can't get there? So, I mean, there are just multiple ways to look at this song now that we've broken it down.
Yeah, a third way, like you said. That's why I think this is one of the strongest songs on the album, and certainly the most overlooked.
Well, the fact that there's this much interpretation and that much leeway in looking at this song, I think says a lot, because that's when That's when art really thrives, is when you can break things down like this and have that much interpretation.
That's when art
Um,
really thrives. I know you don't
track
want to do this. Yeah, but we got to do the next one. Not your favorite.
No, it's not. It's just kind of there for me. Track 10, New York.
In New York, freedom looks like too many choices. In New York, I found a friend to drown out the other voices. Voices on a cell phone, voices from home, voices of the hard sell, voices down a stairwell in New York. Just got a place in New York.
I think it kind of thematically, they're speaking metaphorically about, kind of in much the same way they were on pop. I do think it can be taken literally, though. I think that this is also a kind of a bit of a hat tip to New York City, but also there's a metaphorical component of trying to navigate life with all of its confusing and perhaps harmful
many
choices and
choices.
consequences. Yeah, too many choices.
Yeah, but I think it's true. I think literally this is what happened. He had gotten a place in New York.
Yeah, right.
And so it's speaking from that experience at that time in his life too. It's a midlife crisis. Although, what is midlife? What was he 40? Is that midlife? I thought
It
50s
is
was
40s.
midlife.
Yeah, I guess that's considered
So
midlife.
midlife crisis, okay. It's not strictly autobiographical because he didn't lose his wife. But I mean, he's taken on this character in this song that you lose it all. In New York, I lost it all to you and your vices. I'm staying on to figure out my midlife crisis. Hit an iceberg in my life. I think that's super confessional right there. But I'm still afloat. That to me is if that little coupling isn't super concentrated U2 right there. Bono's lyrics, his whole perspective. I hit an iceberg in my life. I'm still afloat. Difficulties, challenges, but I'm still pressing on. Still haven't found, what I'm
Don't go there.
looking for. Yeah. So you lose your balance in the queue for the lifeboat. I love that little analogy. You lose your balance, lose your wife.
Yeah.
That's humorous in the queue for the lifeboat. But I do love the crunchy guitar. You've got an unquenchable thirst for New York. I think there's some really good guitar work here.
Yes.
Otherwise, this album is kind of lightweight in terms of the guitar, and like the biggest guitar song up till now, I think, is Elevation, and that's
Without a
not
doubt.
really,
Yeah.
and that's not really freestyle or a solo type.
Right. It's
type
a lot
work.
of this is more the kind of guitar I like to see out of Edge.
Yeah, right.
I don't like that heavy distortion that we see on Elevation. I think it works better here. It's interesting though that he kind of vacillates between metaphorically and literally. So Irish, Italian, Jews, and Hispanics, religious nuts, political fanatics in the stew.
Yeah.
I mean, that's. I mean, he's paying homage to New York, but he's also, kind of throwing himself out there as this kind of a confessional of a man in a midlife crisis.
I like some of the imagery. I like some of the lyrics. Again, I think they're kind of, I don't know. Again, this is not high poetry, but I think it's kind of cool. Voices on a cell phone. And don't forget, in 2000,
that was a big deal.
It was a big deal. I mean, a cell phone. Yeah. We used to be so annoyed that people would always be talking on their cell phone everywhere, not looking at their phone like we do now. People used to be talking on the phone everywhere. Okay. So voices on a cell phone. Summers get hot well into the hundreds. Is that true? That's pretty hot, I guess, with the heat index, right?
Maybe with the heat index. Yeah, maybe.
And I always liked hot as a hairdryer in your face.
In your face. That's a nice one. That's hot.
I know. It is. And then my favorite thing, you know how you hear things a certain way, even though it's not the way it is in the song. Your head just gets it a different way and rearranges lyrics. Like I always find
Tony Danza.
Yeah, not even misheard lyrics, but like I rearrange it. I always hear the Irish been coming here for years without a change of clothing. That's what my brain does. I trade those lyrics out just because it's funny. Like, what if the Irish immigrants came over here with no extra clothes? And I
Dang
don't
it,
know
I forgot
why.
to pack those shorts.
The Irish been coming here for years, and you never bring, a change of clothing. One of those things. But
That's funny.
I think so. I like the song. It's not super life changing, but I like the way it has a dramatic feeling to it. I have heard people criticize the lyrics and say it's a little bit hackney, with the Irish, Italians, Jews, and Hispanics. But I don't mind. I mean, to me, this sounds like you two, and it's good. And I wish I could hear it live because I think it would really kill.
You probably, if you saw them on the tour, you probably saw it live.
I guess I did.
I remember
did see
this
them
live. I remember seeing Bono standing up there looking like the Statue of Liberty. He would strike
yeah?
some sort of, he would hold the microphone up and do this. And
No kidding. I wonder
yeah, I
if you
saw
would.
him in Atlanta.
I guess I did.
And,
I saw that tour in Indianapolis with my friend Andy Williamson, Andy Fest. New York, it's, could this have been a B-side? Could it have been left off and something? I'm done with that whole discussion. It is on the album, and this is what we're looking at. So is it a skip song for you or not?
No, but I think I have to be in the right mindset.
Yep.
It's a song that I have to search for. It doesn't search for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I have to know, okay, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm hoping for right now. Oh yeah, let's cue up New York.
Yeah.
And this is the best part of the song, though, lyrically. In the stillness of the evening, when the sun has had its day, I heard your voice whispering, "Come away now."
Yeah.
And then they just close out with New York, New York, and you're through the song. But I've always loved that. That's just a beautiful piece of writing there.
Yeah. That's a nice way to close it. And I've got an unquenchable thirst. There are some moments and some phrases in here that I really like. That's pretty cool. An unquenchable thirst. I lost it all to you and your vices. I like the personification of New York, as this force, not just a melting pot of people, but like this energy there that you can't resist. It's almost like something out of Dante's Inferno. I don't know what that means. Okay, so moving on to the final track on the album. It is called Grace.
When she goes to work, you can hear the strings. Grace finds beauty in everything. Grace, she carries the world on her hips.
He takes the blame, she covers the shame, removes the stain. It could be her name. And now, is this a lovely coda? Is it a beautiful, gentle, delicate closing track about the idea of grace? Yes. Is there some triteness to it? What do you think?
It's a gorgeous song. That doesn't mean it's a great song. It's just the music and the imagery is so smooth.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. So, for example, and when she walks on the street, you can hear the strings.
Yeah.
She's got the time to talk. When she goes to work, you can hear her strings. Grace finds beauty in everything. She carries a world on her hips. No champagne flute for her lips. No twirls or skips between her fingertips. She carries a pearl in perfect condition. It's almost just such a song where you can just sit in that moment. It's like a beanbag where you can just plot down and you're kind of surrounded by everything that's comfortable. I think, it's a beautiful song. I do come back to this one. I come back to this one some. I can't immerse myself in it time after time because, I think it does, like you said, it probably becomes a bit trite although the idea of grace should never be trite, but the conveyance of that in the song may be. Bono says, grace is a word I'm depending on. The universe operates by karma. We all know that. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. There's some atonement built in, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And so grace enters the picture to say, I'll take the blame. I will carry your cross. Then enters grace and turns that upside down. The use of grace in the feminine sense, I think, works well with a lot of the other graceful allusions in the song.
Mhm.
Like we talked about the pearls, the twirls, the skips, and so forth. But it's a great, just a great analogy, a great description there by Bono, I think, for kind of the basis for this song.
When you look at the words on the page, it becomes a better song than when you hear it. At least that's my experience. She's got the time to talk. That comes out. And to me, reading it, it makes it more powerful. And I love this line. She travels outside of karma. Ooh, man, that's just exquisite.
Yep.
Transcending the laws of karma.
Yep.
And when she goes to work, you can hear the strings. That's, to me, that's great, because when grace goes to work, meaning that grace is something that we do, grace is something that is done unto you from God or from others. When grace is at work, you can hear the strings, the beauty of life. These words are great. The feminine idea of grace is great. She carries a world on her hips. To me, that means like when a mother carries a little baby on her hip.
Yeah.
That's what I think of. All right. And all the other feminine iterations here. And that's why he does say it's a name for a girl. It's also a thought that changed the world. So, he introduces this being a feminine idea, or personified in a feminine sense. What once was hurt, was friction, what left a mark no longer stains, because grace makes beauty out of ugly things. It is a lovely song, and it's so spare and sparse that,
Yeah.
like you said, you almost got to sit down, and this is not background music. I don't think it's passive listening. Certainly you could, and it's fine for that, but I almost feel like this is a meal to be kind of savored.
Well, and I think that the long intro is kind of a prelude to get you into the mood of what the song is going to describe. So it's like you have this little moment where it's okay, now let's prepare your mind and soul for what's coming. And the mood of the intro does that, and then the lyrics come in and really support that.
That's a great way to put it, though, that it gives you this intro that prepares you. And it's like walking down a hallway toward the destination, which are the words of the song. And it's kind of, almost the entrance music to it. That's pretty cool.
It's a little bit like 40, and not necessarily with what they're discussing, but you've got this really subdued, slow, religious theme song at the end of the album. A little bit like, Wake Up Dead Man is too, but Wake Up Dead Man is kind of, like we talked about, an angry song. This is kind of turning that up on its side and looking at the beauty of who God is instead of shaking your fist at him.
Yeah, and everything can't be resolved and
right
and put into neat categories and everything's perfect, because you can still live with that tension of,
Yep.
Jesus, can you take the time? But I still believe in grace. But hit an iceberg, still moving on. All that stuff.
Yep.
And that's, to me, that's what makes this still a U2 album, because it has those elements, and then it has some great pop songs and some good pop songs.
Yeah, it's a good album. It really is. It's without jumping too far, it may be the best thing they've done in the last 20 years. I'd have to think about
it may
that.
be, but I mean, there are moments, and
I know.
the way we've broken down this podcast is to do an album at a time. It would be easier if that's the case. Then you're probably right. Although I would have a soft spot for No Line on the Horizon. If you look at moments, there have been some I think several greater moments in their music since this album.
Yeah.
But as a cohesive,
Yes.
like the Rolling Stone quote was in the beginning about, this is the, such a great set of melodic music. So, all right, rock and roll doggy, let's do it. Let's give our choices, our picks for standout track, most underrated track, standout lyrics, and overall score. I will shoot at you first and say, what is your standout track?
Kite.
Yeah.
Just it's I think whereas is Walk On, I've always kind of looked at Kite and Walk On as being similar, but maybe just because they're both, I think, really good songs and they're both right there together on the album. I think the songwriting in Kite's just really good, and the music is there. I love the slide. Yep, for me it's Kite.
Yeah, for me it's Walk On.
Yep.
Yeah, and to me that's the centerpiece of the album. And if you were going to say what's this era or version of U2 about, you could say A Beautiful Day. Yeah, but to me, Walk On really crystallizes everything in this album. It has some depth to it. It has some of the faith-based encouragement, and it has some of the challenges that are kind of built into it. It's an overall capsule, I think, of this album, and I think it's good. And I go back to it, and I don't really ever get tired of it. I wouldn't skip it ever. And I think it plays live great. It's just encouraging, and I like it. That's my choice for a standout track, and that is Walk On.
And I think you probably, because I said Kite was maybe this kind of the center point of the album in that respect, because of, you're talking about all that you can't leave behind, and there's a component of what you're leaving behind in Kite and all that. But I think you're probably onto something with Walk On as being.
I mean, they're right
centerpiece.
there.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it could be centerpiece. What does that mean? It could be both.
Yeah, right.
They're kind of inextricable.
Yeah, it could have been one great long song. It's they could have spliced it together like Paul McCartney did with Band on the Run. It's one song. They spliced together. It's one song, but yet it's two.
Now this song is completely different, but it didn't really ever stop. So it's just like a Pink Floyd album. It all just kind of runs together.
What's your most underrated track?
When I Look at the World, without hesitation, to me that is the song that you don't hear anybody pick as the most meaningful to them, or the deepest on the album, or for lack of a better term, the has the most depth. That faith battle within yourself, and the way that you are wondering what's wrong with you, and the questioning, all the things that we know that U2 is about, and that the reason that that I relate to their music. It's accessible. We haven't used that word for a few minutes.
Word again.
Yeah, that's the thing for me, is that this part of the journey, it's a musical journey, when I look at the world, it just perfectly expresses an important feeling in my own heart. And so, what's yours?
I knew you would choose that, and I totally understand why. And I think it's a wise selection. However, I am going to go with Peace on Earth. I think it's just very poignant and just a real gut punch of a song. I like the construct, really nice melody.
You never thought the beginning of that sounded like church bells? I thought that was kind of a...
No, I did not till you mentioned it. And now I want to go back and listen to it more to see if I pick up on that. I can't listen to the song now without thinking about Natalie Imbruglia.
Well,
don't know why.
Because it's your own memory. That's your own experience. And just like we all have things we associate specific memories with songs, that's yours. And I
bet I'm the only person on earth who associates Natalie Imbruglia with Peace on Earth.
I don't know, man.
That's my claim to fame as a human being.
There were other people at the concert who saw her, and they probably don't know how to pronounce Imbruglia, and so they're doing a podcast in a parallel universe and calling her Imbruglia.
But funny. We digress. What's your best lyric?
Well, I've got a bunch of lyrics that I think are strong, and so I'm going to tell you these. This is Stuck in a Moment. This is a lyric that I hadn't thought about until very recently. I'm just trying to find a decent melody, a song that I can sing in my own company. It's like he doesn't like himself, right? He's just trying to find a melody, i.e., a thought, an ethos, whatever, a song that I can sing in my own company, something that I can embrace myself and own and be part of my own identity that I can stand. You know, that's a really clever song or a really clever lyric. So I will also just run through a few more in a little while. I won't be blown by every breeze. Friday night running, Sunday on my knees. Again, that kind of double spiritual and drawn down into New York kind of feeling of like Friday night running. And then on Wild Honey, What is Soul? Love Me, Give Me Soul. And when the night is someone else's and you're trying to get some sleep, when your thoughts are too expensive to ever want to keep.
That's a good line.
Yeah, that's from When I Look at the World. And then my choice for standout lyrics is Touch Me, Take Me to That Other Place, Teach Me, I Know I'm Not a Hopeless Case. And that is from Beautiful Day. To me, that is, again, what really kind of crystallizes and expresses succinctly this album is that, hey, man, I've still got some issues, right? But a touch from you can take me to, and I love that other place that's harkens back to the Joshua tree, to the where the streets have no name, to that other place. I love that, the idea that there's this other place. I know I'm not a hopeless case because I'm pretty got some issues, right? But I'm not hopeless.
I can't add anything to that because that's exactly what I had, and that would have been the explanation that I offered. I mean, I know people may think that this has been prearranged, but that is exactly what I had, and your thoughts were pretty much in line with mine as to why. I mean, it's a kind of a throwback to say where the streets have no name. That's why I love that song so much, is because I love the idea that there's something there and you can't get there, and you're trying to get there and you're trying to get there. There's a limitation there, and it's kind of this recognition of that limitation that I think intrigues me. And that's what, take me to that other place. I can't get there. That other place is also ambiguous. What is that other place? We don't know, but I'm intrigued that there's something greater and something bigger and something better, and I need that help to get to that other place, because I know, in spite of that, and how that I'm jacked up and that I may not be able to get to that place, I know I'm not a hopeless case.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly right. And it's not even an afterlife kind of thing. To me, it's like a better state of being, whether it's realizing your full potential or getting past a heartbreak, whatever is on the other side of where you are now, that other place. It could be a landing spot that's like a miniature goal, not like the ultimate, heavenly destination. It could be that other place, a better place than where you are now. There could be 100 other places in your life that you get to along the way, but the next one, or it could be either way. It's so open to interpretation, but the fact that it's just called that other place, it makes it
I know
magical.
there's something about that other place that we talked about this a few podcasts ago, and it's that kind of flying through the cloud moment where the clouds part and you see this other place.
And it turns out it's the top of a liquor store in downtown LA.
I think we're being shut down.
Not at all what I expected heaven to be like. But
rooftop in LA.
I don't know, maybe. I don't know. It's actually, so you're right. It's that flying through, and it's that whole feeling. It's that whole essence of, that's what, to me, that other place is. And it's just one of those kind of that's kind of a calling card for you to me.
Yes. What's your rating?
My rating, I give it a 9.
You gave it a 9.
Yeah, 9.0.
So you gave it a 9.
Niner.
I am going to give it an 8.8.
Dude. It's elevation. That shit ruined you.
Yeah. Well, we're 1/10 of a point off now. So
I know.
on the
Okay.
average, on the average, you're at 8.6. I'm at 8.5.
Okay. All right. And I could not care. Yeah, this is like, all right, how silly is this whole number system? It's
What is it?
arbitrary.
1/10 of a point.
I know, but it is kind of funny that we are, without planning it, we kind of like them equally. You're like, wow,
Yeah.
what a couple of nerds. No wonder you're in a podcast.
I know there's a part of me that goes, yeah, I kind of want us to finish with exactly the same score, and then there's a part of me that thinks that's going to be really childish if we do.
That's awkward and childish. Yeah, that'd be like, seriously.
That's through 10 albums. We're at 8.6 and 8.5. You're 1/10 of a point ahead of me. It's like gymnastics. Hush, those feet were pointed out on that dismount. We're going to have to deduct 1/10 of a point for that.
East German judge, always critical.
East German judge.
I do like the album more. It's more listenable than it used to be for me, and I appreciate it more.
Yeah, it is. I think they come back into this to some degree with songs of experience.
Back to what? Pop?
Accessibility.
I'm looking forward to doing Atomic Bomb. It's different, although you could put them in the same category. You could kind of put them together.
I know. They run together. That
yeah.
The album cover's horrible though. It's a weird
the album cover is awful.
I don't know what they would say. It's like somebody lost a bet or something.
Yeah, it's like that's the worst album cover since Unforgettable Fire.
It's like if I were making an album cover out of Photoshop or something. Oh, I can crop it and drag it. Oh yeah, that looks good.
Yeah.
I remember when that was posted and somebody thought, I remember seeing it posted somewhere and people thought, well, that's not that. I mean, it's not going to be the real album cover.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just a joke.
Yeah. That plays a part too in what you think of an album. Because if you see that album cover every time you reach for a CD or whatever Spotify shows you, that plays a part in what you think of the album.
Musically, they were in a groove in the 80s and 90s, but I think when it comes to album covers from 84 to, I don't know. Even pop is different as an album cover as it was. I think it nailed the mood of the album.
Yeah, exactly. And
particularly
so
the disc, all that multicolored disc.
Yeah, Achtung Baby and Joshua Tree, of course.
Yeah.
And War. October, terrible.
Yeah.
Album cover, right?
Boy, was it. The American version of Boy wasn't good. And Rattle and Hum wasn't, but Rattle and Hum was
the American version of Boy was a stretch. That picture of
I know.
Looked like ink blot.
Like a lithograph or something.
It looked like a Rorschach's ink blot test.
Where's the butterfly? How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. There's some good tracks on there. Crumbs from Your Table, All Because of You.
Oh, yeah.
Original Species is wonderful.
Yeah.
Gosh, I love that guitar.
And that's it for this episode of Rock and Roll Doggies. Smurf, take us home, please.
All right. Thanks for logging on and listening to our thoughts on one of the most influential bands of the modern era. Be sure to follow us at Rock and Roll Doggies on Instagram and on Twitter at Roll Doggies for details about our next podcast and other tidbits as we take a chronological journey through the discography of U2. Until we connect again, good night, everybody.
No, it's a musical journey.